I accord a warm welcome to our esteemed guest, Mrs. Nandita Ghatge. Nandita ji is well known to this august gathering. She is a member of the royal Ghatge dynasty of Kagal. Nandita ji is an avid historian, a prolific writer, and professionally an interior designer and an incredible artist. Her literary works include many books, notable which are A Maharaja in Florence and Ghatge's The Rise of a Royal Dynasty, 1398 to 2022, a 600-year saga of a family history. She is the principal designer of Kagal craft and specializes in historic restorations. Along with the husband, Mr. Praveen Singh Ghadge ji, a wildlife enthusiast, she loves traveling and has been to many safaris worldwide. Her book, A Maharaja in Florence, depicts the journey of Chhatrapati Rajaram Maharaj to Europe in a young age. He visited and met many dignitaries in this tour, but unfortunately, he passed away tragically in Italy. In his memory, a memorial called Monumenta al Indiana is erected at Kashina Park, Florence. We, as Kolhapuri people, would like to understand some historical events, and so I would like to ask you to throw more light about history. So, the question is, what inspired you to write this book?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful cultural evening, I would say. And I very much enjoyed your talk, Shraddhaji. It was really beautiful insight into your history. Um, so, what inspired me to write the book? Actually, I had no intention of writing the book, to be truthful. I was kind of forced into it, I would say. My initial book was 600-year-old saga of the Ghatges. And during that journey, I had some connection with Rajaram and one of our ancestors. And in 2018, I went to Florence and I wanted to know more about the monument and our connection to it. And hence, I asked one of the Italian journalist and researcher to translate some of the documents in the archives in Florence. And uh, it so happened that I had put about 2 pages in my main book about the history of the monument. And being an designer architect, I love anything that is exotic and something different. So when the office of the mayor of Florence invited me to talk, or the fans of Rajaram, I would say, in Florence, invited me to talk about him, I realized that they didn't know anything about Kolhapur. They didn't know anything about Chhatrapatis. They just thought he was a Punjabi king because of his pagdi. And I thought, in half an hour, how much can I explain how Kolhapur was formed, who's Shivaji Maharaj, what lineage has he come from? And that's how the book was born, for a European crowd, explaining in brief the history of Kolhapur, how it was formed, and the lineage that he belonged to. So it was, I think, thanks to them that the book was born.
So, why did you write only about Chhatrapati Rajaram Maharaj and not any other historical figure?
As I said, I wrote 400 pages on our family history. That was enough for me. That took me 5 years. And this was born out of a necessity. So hopefully, I will be able to do justice to the smaller figures in our family history, like maybe Raja Hindu Rao, or Baizabai, or Sakaram Rao, or Jaising Rao Ghadge. So maybe this book has inspired me to do smaller books, which would be, because that is too big for a normal person to read, unless you're really passionate about history. I don't think it's more of a documentation. So this would be more like a story form. So maybe I might do something like that in future.
So, can you please elaborate about your visit to Florence and what were your feelings when you saw the memorial?
Uh, the visit to Florence started with almost 30 years ago when His Highness Chhatrapati Shah asked me to help refurbish the palace for Yuvraj Sambhaji Raje's wedding. And while I was doing this, I came across this beautiful watercolors which depicted uh, this exotic Chhatri, a Maratha Chhatri in Florence. And it had Chhatrapati Shah Maharaj and Praveen's grandfather, Sir Rajaram Ghatge. And this was in 1902. So that kind of really piqued my curiosity as to what is this Maratha Chhatri doing in Florence. I had no clue about anything, where it was, what it was. And when soon after we went to Florence, and I asked His Highness as to where it is. So he said it's somewhere on the river Arno. Now I said I have only half a day. How do I go looking for this chhatri on the whole bank of the river Arno? And my husband, as you know, they're not very interested in all these things, having lived in history. And I being like she said, a Mumbaikar and wanting to know more. So I sort of said, no, no, we'll give half a day. And luckily, one of my Italian friends then told me it's in the Cassini Garden. And there's a very humorous story about it because this was way back in 2000. I was trying to act very stylish, wearing fancy shoes. And this silly taxi guy dropped us at the other end of the garden. Now it was a cold October morning. Nobody, not a soul in that damn park. And we were walking with my husband cursing, saying, see, a chhatri is a very private thing. It is meant for the family to go and pay visit. You see, it is where you go and pay your respects as, on the Jayanti day or whatever. So he had no clue why were we doing this exercise of walking in this cold Italian garden. Anyways, long story short, we landed up at the Chhatri. Uh, I was a little, my ego was a little hurt because of all the, whatever I had, some words from him. So when I came back, I said, in fact, I found out a little more. And then I realized that there was, in fact, a connection between my husband's family and Rajaram. They were both first cousins, Mava's Bhau, and they were brought up together. They were studying together. And as a regent later on, he also helped in finishing the Chhatri. When he became the regent, there are documents where he has sanctioned the bills for the last. And then he was the first person to visit the Chhatri in 1885. And then soon after, Shah Maharaj and the famous painting that took place. So there was a deep connection between the two uh, families.
So, during his visit in Florence, what cultural differences did he face? Like, can you enlighten us with the confluence of two different cultures? And I would also like to ask you about the jewels and the fabrics which were used that time.
Uh, First of all, as I said, he was adopted uh, from the famous Patrankar family, and in 18, I think 66, he was taken over by most of these young princesses were then taken under the guardianship of a British tutor, and Captain Edward West was his tutor, and Unawala from Mumbai was his another tutor. Now they were taken away from the old palace into a small, I would call a hostel near Bauda, and kept there so that they would have less influence of the what the British called a toxic environment in the palace at those times. And because he was alone, then Jaisingrao Ghatge, his cousin, also joined him with his sister. So now these three have been brought up by these British influence. They were taught, uh, they believed in those times that a king should also be at home in a European society as he would be in a Indian darbar. Uh, During that time, Queen Victoria's son, the second son, the Duke of Edinburgh, has visited Bombay, and he, being the Chhatrapati, now has gone and visited him in Bombay, and he got very excited. He's at that time he must be 18 years old, so he's really excited about the whole regalia, the pomp of, and and the whole. I can imagine what must have been laid out for this Duke. So now he's decided that I want to go to Europe. And in those days, if you I don't know if you know that a Hindu king could not cross the seven seas. It was forbidden by religion to the kings, Hindu kings, and the Brahmins. Brahmins, because it would hinder in their daily, what do you say, religious uh, duties. And as a king, you cannot leave your kingdom and leave it undefended. Now he has literally, fought with everybody and said, "Nothing doing. I am going to go." And finally, the British have given him permission. The Suez Canal has just started a year ago, so the travel is cut down. And I think, as far as I know, he's the first Hindu Maratha king to visit Europe. Maybe the Sikh king Dilip, he was taken by force, and maybe a few Muslims, but definitely he's the first Hindu Maratha to have visited England and Europe. So that itself was something fantastic. Uh, Now this young prince lands, Maharaja lands in England, or first in Marseille, and then he's gone to Paris. He's crossed the border, gone to England, and he is something exotic for them, because according to their papers, Lady Verney has written a description of him about this, young Maharaja wearing these. She's described the color of the achkan that he's wearing. Maybe it's a green velvet with zardozi work, and you can imagine the jewels that he's wearing, the pagdi, and so the shirpates, and so I'm sure he must have been a fascinating figure uh, for the Europeans and the British. And having been, he was good in English, he was a very intelligent king. So uh, he's fond of dancing, by the way. He's learned the quadrilles. So can you imagine a Maratha prince dancing with these Europeans into, in their ballrooms? And he's taken lessons in the dance. He's taken private tuitions in London. So that's how interested he was in, the interaction, learning new things, visiting. He's gone and visited the parliament. He's seen different debates between Disraeli and Gladstone. So here's this 19 or 20-year-old wanting to experience everything. He's gone for plays, he's gone for musicals. So, and he's written this diary, which is a diary of the Raja of Kolhapur, it is called, and it was printed after his death in 1872. So that is where I have got most of the, what do you say, uh, material from. But my contribution, I would say, to the book is that instead of just, someone asked me, like, why the book then? Why? There is, even the Italians know this diary exists. So why would you write another book? So now it is like you meeting somebody here in the ministry, and you say you met some, fancy minister or someone who's famous now. But after 155 years, you wouldn't know who that person is. And here he is mentioning all these people like a journal. I met Max Mueller. Now, who's Max Mueller? I met, Sassoon of Sassoon Dogs. So, my contribution is to find out who these people were and maybe write it in two, because it would get too boring. So, maybe just do a brief introduction of who these people were, how important they were in that time. And as a designer architect, I also wanted to paint a picture of, if he went to meet Queen Victoria, how, what was the Windsor Castle like? What was the interiors like? So that I've added the description, or I've added how Scotland was, how, what museums he visited. So uh, as a reader, what I would like to know, I've tried to put as much as I could in the book.
I believe that the Italian newspaper Repubblica celebrated you in Florence. And how was your experience?
Uh, to be very frank, I was very surprised. There was this journalist who sends me a message saying, "Can I talk to you?" And I had no clue of how big that newspaper was. La Repubblica is supposedly the second largest newspaper in Italy. Now, he had a series of questions that he asked me, and they were a little like I had to do some research answering them. So his first question was, what is the significance of a chhatri? Right. Now, chhatri for us is like, acha, go once a year, go put, show the prasad, whatever, put some flowers, and that's all. You don't think about it. It's a routine thing that you do. But when you're answering someone of that caliber, you have to give it some. You can't just say, no, no, we go there every year and we put flowers. That's not the answer they would expect. So then, when I went into a little bit of, I sort of thought over it, I realized that it was what a Chatri would, to me, would be a tangible monument of what your ancestors stood for. It is the values that they have, it kind of reminds you that these are the values or the traditions that are coming down to you, and it is a solid form of that person or the values that that family has imbibed and carried on. And as a younger generation, you are you're bound to that duty to be following that. So that is one question that he asked me. And for him also, after 155 years, the heading of his, he gave me a full page, colored page article. It's of course in Italian. I had to get it translated from someone, and it's sort of the title is jewels, flame, like smoke and flames, jewels and mud. So for him also, the jewels are that important. He's talking about the funeral and the spices. The so he's put that caption as a thing. So for even now, they are so fascinated with our spices, with our jewels, with our the whole. I mean, I was surprised after. Even now, they are so fascinated with the exotic being that India is. And I was lucky to be also interviewed by another few journalists, like the magazine Florentine, and there's a online portal which is me.com. So I was really surprised at the kind of interest that they had in Rajaram. Unfortunately, in Kolhapur, we've forgotten him, but they've kept his memory alive. So yeah.
So, how did you research about the book? Like, how did you get the information? And we want to know about the archives which you received.
Okay. So, when I first started my book on Ghatges, it was, I wasn't supposed to write that book, also, by the way. We tried with a lot of historians, but they weren't that interested because we're not a popular subject. So, I took up the challenge. And I think I met you in the archives in Bombay. We were going through all the dusty archives at that time. Luckily, I was fortunate that Kolhapur archives opened up all the old, documents, Bombay, and during COVID, a lot of the universities had opened their online portal. So I got a lot of information of the British period during that time. uh, in 2018, when I visited Italy again, I asked my friend Deirdre Piro to translate some of the documents related to the death of his, and she very kindly agreed. I believe there is also a foundation that was created for the he died of lung something like tuberculosis. So there was a foundation formed for him in his name for patients suffering from the same disease. But unfortunately, that archives was under repair, so I haven't been able to find out a little more about who actually created the foundation. Whether it was Jai Singh Rao who went after him in 1885, or was it uh, Chhatrapati Shah, I don't know. So I hopefully I'll find out. And by the way, this book is going to be also translated into Italian. So
After writing this book, what message can you give us youngsters? Like, how can we relate to it now?
how can you how can you relate to it? Well, we are part of history, aren't we? I mean, we are because of our ancestors. We wouldn't exist without them. So I think every family has a story to tell, whether it's big or small. There are always some interesting, uh, events that have taken place in every family. It needn't be royalty or fancy people. Even normal people have some fantastic stories to tell. And I also, like I said, like my mother-in-law also that time, you take them for granted sometimes. So I forgot to mention that in my search for archives, I don't know, for some reason she gave me all her old letters, all the old photographs, uh, and at that time I'm like, my God, why has she not given me jewels? Why has she given me all these old letters and photographs, and I don't even know who was in it, half of them. But then, of course, when I wrote the book, first book, I realized what a treasure I had got. It was absolutely valuable. I mean, every picture was worth uh, a fortune. Uh, but I feel really sad that had I known earlier, I wish we had taped them, or at least written about them. And these people, I'm sure you also know, they lived in history, so they didn't realize the value of writing down. None of them ever spoke about anything historic. There were some funny incidents that they would recount, but no one mentioned that so and so was this thing and that. It was part of their lives, which is very sad because they were so understated and so down to earth that we've lost, I think, a lot of treasure because of that. And I feel as a new generation, you all are much more tech savvy. You can just tape them and just keep it. You never know, after a few years it might be invaluable. So I would, as a lover of art and history, I think we should, that would be a wonderful thing to do. And as I said, I'm neither a historian nor a writer. So if I can do it, anyone can. Sure.
So, indeed, it has been a unique journey to Florence, and through your excerpts, Nandita ji, we visited. Um, because of the description, we can imagine how Rajaram Maharaj would be at that time. And I'm really thankful that you've been a part of Suramya. And I would like to ask if any one of you have questions regarding the book. So, one last message to all youngsters, and I would like to end it.
I would like to mention here, as because it's an art gathering and a lot of architects, I believe, you being one. When I visited the Chhatri, they have spent over 40,000 euros on renovating and restoring the Chhatri. I met the architect. She was there for my book read, and she was humble enough to ask me, "Have we done a good job?" Now she has taken the trouble of even creating plaster, like they made molds so that the columns can be replicated in the same way. They have painted the inside of the chhatri with the paint that was used 150 years ago. They have restored the nose which was damaged. And if someone in Italy, they have the best architecture, Renaissance architecture in the world. I mean, their art, their architecture is unbelievable. For them to take an interest in this small, I mean, he's not known, right? He's not Shivaji Maharaj. He is a 20-year-old Maharaja who happened to die in Florence. So now, why would someone like a European country take so much interest in an Indian monument? And we have hundreds of such monuments which every day are getting destroyed in the name of modernity. I mean, we are trying to be modern, so we are breaking down old stuff and creating new ugly structures. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be me, but I'm part of the whole fraternity. But I'm just saying, but why aren't like in my recent interview with Kumar Ketkar in at the Nehru Center, he asked the same question. Why aren't we proud of our heritage? Why aren't we, looking after our art and our architecture? Are we so, absolutely not bothered? And that was his question to me as to if they could produce such beautiful pieces of art in that time, why aren't we recreating it? Like they are both, they are doing the Ganjifa again. I'm sure every family has something that they can recreate and, restore. So, as Indians, don't you think we should be doing? I mean, the younger generation definitely should maybe take up a project in Kolhapur and just maybe restore at least one part of it. Uh, I feel it would be a good contribution. And since your forum is Suramya, I think you could you can take up one little, even if it's a small chatri. There are so many chatris on the Panchaganga. So even if one of them were restored, colored, or whatever, I'm sure we've achieved a lot with this talk. Thank you.